Welcome back. We're looking forward, Bez Hashem, to continue and conclude this Yigeres HaKodesh. This is Holy Epistle of the Alter Rebbe, number 16, the 16th. We always take a few moments to point out this distinction, how the Yigeres HaKodesh, how it's distinct from all the other different segments, or the other segments rather of the Sefer Tanya Kadisha. We know there's 5. We mentioned this time and again. It's with precision. Number 5. This is the Teresh B'Ksav, known to be, that is, the Teresh B'Ksav of Teresh Achsidus. While the previous segments are sequentially Yigeres HaKodesh because of their letters sent at different times, different situations the Alter Rebbe was addressing. So really there's no direct correlation between one and the other. We did mention, and we do this mention maybe even a little too often, because today, if you're following, of course, it becomes a little redundant, but if you're not new, we just like to throw this, just to have a little bit of a perspective of the present information that we're learning, the segment that we're learning, its style, and the way it's set up. But we did have a separate presentation. This is always okay to send you back to the overall presentation of the backdrop of Yigeres HaKodesh, which we had in the 10th Yigeres. That's 6 over. The beginning of Yud, the beginning of the 10th, we had an overall presentation, so we don't have to be mairich, we don't have to elaborate. It's a click away. We do mention this idea of the access to previous classes on the overall. Additional to this, we had a presentation again in the beginning of the 10th Yigeres, the 10th epistle of the backdrop of Yigeres HaKodesh. But on the overall, this is also a way to have access to all the previous classes. Again, this is the 4th segment of the Sefer Tanya Kadisha. We merited to conclude Likutei Amorim, the first 3, Likutei Amorim, Sheikh the morning, Yigeres HaTshuva. And it's all lined up again wherever you're watching it, but the advantage of the original website, which is tanyaonline, one word, .com, tanyaonline.com, you have all the previous classes set up, and many times, besides the Alter Rebbe himself cross-referencing, for that matter, interestingly, from one Yigeres to the other, which is a little bit more, I say interesting, because it's not sequential, these Yigeres. Nonetheless, the Alter Rebbe writes, I wrote this in this letter, I wrote this in last year's letter as an example. It's always a click away to see context and see what the Alter Rebbe is referring to, what he cross-references to. And so too, we do that at times ourselves. There's certain ideas which are discussed in these epistles and these chapters in general, and in the present study, in the Yigeres HaKodesh. And instead of elaborating it, and again, we just send you to a previous chapter, if it's Likutei Amorim or Shaykh the morning, Yigeres HaTshuva, for that matter, as we do from time to time if we come across that exact subject, which is discussed, which is presently discussed in this page, but it's discussed in length and in elaboration in other chapters. We just literally point out which chapter, and it's so easy to access the way this website, the original website, tanyaonline.com, is set up, that all the classes are lined up on the left side of the screen. It's really seconds to define the subject. It comes up with actually corresponding text of the subject which is studies. Additionally, add the way it's set up also, the text is on a separate scroll bar, as such easy to follow on the overall. So we're continuing over here on, we concluded the 248, we're holding the very end of 248, as such, it is the cure of the body and the soul, mamash, literally. We'll explain in a moment. Skin for skin, and whatever belongs to man he would give for his soul. So what is Alter Rebbe is talking about over here? Or as we mentioned distinctively that in last week's class, that this is the conclusion, the very conclusion of this idea that we reached, and it's really the culmination of it. We're just out of time, so we didn't read these few words, but it's not a new idea. It's really the conclusion. So if you see this wherever you're watching, or if you're watching it on this site, so it's the second to the last class, towards the very end, which is this reason where the Alter Rebbe compels, encourages, perhaps better said, it's actually beyond encouraging. The Alter Rebbe really makes a presentation of the essentiality of not compromising in the mitzvah of tzedakah. And he concludes this idea, this point, and this, which we're learning today, is the culmination. So if you go to this second to the last class on the screen, to the very end, you see this reason, this presentation of the Alter Rebbe, which these words, which we just mentioned, is the culmination of that. Again, we should have culminated, but there wasn't enough time, so we stopped right over here. So we'll repeat it, of course, just briefly, and find these words, or conclude with these words, which is, again, the culmination of that message. What message? This is one of the 6 reasons, 6 presentations, if you will, the Alter Rebbe presents to us in this epistle, of the essentiality, as we just mentioned, not to compromise in the mitzvah tzedakah, even in very difficult times. And the Alter Rebbe acknowledges, I know there are difficult times. He doesn't just say it generally. He's very specific. I know, I gather information to the extent that you, I know exactly what's going on in your camps, that you plummeted in your situation to the extent you have to borrow money to eat. Mamish lovim v'eichlim. And of course, the Alter Rebbe focuses in on that of his awareness, how difficult the situation is. He right away throws in the bracha. We always repeat this bracha, especially when people go through difficult times. Hashem yirachim aleim. Hashem should have mercy on them. V'yarchiv lem b'tzar b'karev. And He should broaden their state of well-being, their parnasa state, the overall brachas, but in this context, which Alter Rebbe is referring to, which is their well-being, their state of parnasa, yarchiv lem. Not only should give them what they need, but it should be in a broad manner, in expansiveness, b'tzar, in a difficult state. And the Alter Rebbe writes, b'karev. Hashem should not wait. He should give them a bracha. He's giving them a bracha that it should happen immediate. Shall it be by everybody? And when Alter Rebbe is talking about this, before he even is going into his message and his demand, if you will, he right away throws a bracha. I know exactly what's going on with you. I know in detail. Mamish lovim v'eichlim. You're borrowing in order to put bread on your table. And of course, Alter Rebbe throws in a bracha. Nonetheless, Alter Rebbe nonetheless, no good are they doing to their soul if nishma of this which I gather. They close their hand. And of course, based on their situation, they closed their hands up, which was open from all along till this present day, to give litain, again quoting over here, in a broad manner, with a good eye to all the needs, essential needs of the poor, or even not to be lashon of yenim, the destitute, the pure destitutes, which their eyes are raised upon us, and if we will not have pity on them, who will have pity on them? Nobody, of course. So we are their brothers, and we have to provide for them. We did mention, Alter Rebbe was referring to again the whole backdrop. You have to, it's like a follow-up of this, which you glean of the different times we speak about the backdrop if you get a Sakedish, but so you see it on that presentation in the beginning of 10. You see how this flows, because Alter Rebbe established an enormous campaign for the group of Reb Mendel Haradoker with his Chassidim, that they made the famous Aliyah to Eretz HaKodesh. They settled in Tzvas and later in Tveria. They went through a very, very difficult time, beyond difficult, as we know the history then. Alter Rebbe alludes to this many times in this Perek Mamash. He's in Nikim, Evyenim, Nikim. So despite Alter Rebbe's generically talking about the mitzvah tzedakah, which is applicable at all times, this is a timeless message, part of the Tanya Kadisha, which is on the overall, of course, a timeless message. Even against HaKadosh, which Alter Rebbe definitely was referring to or addressing particular need at that time. Alter Rebbe, even in this, interestingly, different than all the other the epistles, which Alter Rebbe clearly speaks about the tzedakah to Eretz HaKodesh, and refers clearly and alludes very, very distinctively to that group of Reb Mendel Haradoker. In this case, The Alter Rebbe doesn't mention here the Eretz HaKodesh, interesting, so it's, of course, the Alter Rebbe is talking in a very generic term, or rather, he's talking about every situation, which is this which we mentioned, that it's timeless, meaning say every situation which we see people are in need, not to be so focused in how much we are providing for ourselves and how much we have to provide for ourselves and our family, to continue giving tzedakah in the same manner. But nonetheless, if we're almost 100% sure that the Alter Rebbe is referring to as well that group of Yenim Nikim Asher Neinu Nisois Aleinu, the pure destitute, their eyes turn to us, and if we won't have pity on them, who will? Alter Rebbe, of course, is referring to that as well, or in this case, namely, but I say as well because Alter Rebbe is referring to any situation when we see there are poor and more so destitute, which unfortunately there are till Mashiach comes, when there'll be the sechdal, as the pasuk says, there won't be any more evyenim. And even there's times there isn't, but nonetheless, sometimes the same people who are comfortable, sometimes they go into a state of evyonut, and we have to be there for them at all times. So if you see the previous classes, I believe this is the third, Alter Rebbe presents 6 arguments, 6 presentations, how careful we have to be that even in the most toughest times. How tough? The tough time that Alter Rebbe expresses over here, of him very well being aware of their situation, of the need to borrow and put bread on their table. Nonetheless, we have to continue giving stock and not to compromise at all for that matter. So Alter Rebbe had the first presentation, which that was, Alter Rebbe classifies Shuras Hadin, based on pure halacha, not Lefnim Mishra, not beyond the letter of the law. Pure halacha. Well, that's telling. The halacha says that in these the cases which Alter Rebbe presents over here, we are not allowed to stop giving tzedakah. And Alter Rebbe goes on with another 5, that even though you will try to somewhat find your space within halacha, that maybe not, which Alter Rebbe say, no, it's not so, it is, it's not, maybe not, but let's say you want to say it's not exactly, for whatever reason. A person should be wise enough and prudent enough to go lifnai v'lifnim mishuras hadin, recapping a bit, beyond the letter of the law. And Alter Rebbe used the word lifnai, not lifnim mishuras hadin, as we know that expression. But lifnai v'lifnim, we had it in the, not the last, but the second to the first lesson on this epistle, worthwhile to see. We point out this lashon, very rare lashon, lifnai v'lifnim mishuras hadin. We know it's lifnim mishuras hadin. Was also very telling of the Alter Rebbe's choice of words. Again, you can see that the presentation of the second reason. The third is that we always need rachmanos, we always need Hashem's compassion and mercy on us. And the way we receive Hashem's compassion is when we act in compassion to another party. Take a look there. We won't elaborate. Explain the whole idea of the way Hashem set up and established this whole way of connection with Hashem, the establishment of reciprocity, and therefore, if we need Hashem's rachmanos on us, on how much we do need Hashem's rachmanos on us on a constant basis if we're only honest with ourselves, and therefore we must continue acting with this same misarus l'sat, arousal below, should be commensurate to arousal on high, which is the idea of rachmanos. Again, you got to see it there. I believe it was last week's class. The fourth, all right, the third in the Lifnai, but the fourth out of the 6, the Rebbe says that there's no, brings the pasuk, there's no righteous person in a land that doesn't sin, which we put in context also in last week's class. We won't repeat this. It's important to put it always in context. No one should say, I periodically sin, because the pasuk says there's no even righteous person that doesn't sin. So I'm on par with that pasuk. No, we have to be very careful and not to take this out of context. We had that, we spoke about this also in the very last week's class. But namely, the message is that because there is, unfortunately, sin and stain, which has consequences, tzedakah has this unique energy and power to be mechaperes, to atone, umeginim min haperonis, and to save oneself from punishment. And we spoke again last week at length. We want to repeat it because again it's a click away. This two ideas, mechaperes, which is very distinct. One deeper and more significant. And the second, magina minapuronis, which is atoning one's sin, established that the greatest she'ifa, the greatest aspiration of any normal human being, particularly the Yid, is to have that perfect, seamless relationship with Hashem. And chas v'shalom, there shouldn't be any stain and taint in that relationship. And therefore, if tzedakah cleans that up, well, that's probably the best. That is categorically the reason which I should never stop giving tzedakah if it doesn't need a constant kapara. I spoke about this last week. We shouldn't take the time. But the second thing, so to say, we use the word immature, but we use the expression immature because we gave a parable, which what bothers the child, and what is more important, and the child really doesn't care about, and many times he'd rather not do anything or continue with the process of cure and healing. And that's where it starts complaining and beyond complaining. We gave that example, so we used the expression maturity and immaturity, but in the overall, it is Meginim and Apuranis is that it has that component that it shields from punishment, and that is something which the simple approach, and again, call it the immature dimension of the Yid, but in the end of the day, when something hurts, it hurts, and something is painful in all areas of life when our fancy is tickled, if you will. If it's parnasa, chas v'shalom, rachman again, theoretically, we should always mention that theoretically, not chas v'shalom in reality, but theoretically, if someone's tickled a bit in the areas of parnasa or health, or in any area of life, it hurts. So call it the immature dimension, in comparison to the idea of mechaperes, it is. But in the end of the day, when something hurts, it hurts. You call it whatever you want. Tzedakah has the second component, that it's able to mechaperes, shield somebody from punishment. Of course, telling to every average Yid, suffering is suffering, any way you look at it. But again, it's a bit generally speaking over here. You see it in the last week's class, literally click away, this class right before this one. We were maidich, we elaborated much, and this is the conclusion of last week's statement, which we begin today. And therefore, tzedakah is cure of the body, cure of the soul, mamash, literally, and skin for skin, whatever one has, he would give for his soul. And this is a pasuk in Torah, and it comes up a few times in Sefer Tanya, and Yud, and he gets a Kodesh, and famously in Gimel, and gets a Truvah. Al has it also in later prakim in Kontresachin, brings this pasuk. And in brief, we gave this example quite a few times. Someone comes into a doctor, and he says he has a terrible illness. Doctor says, I can cure you, but if I won't cure you, unfortunately, your state will deteriorate and you'll expire. Rahman al-Islam. Heaven forsake such a situation. But I'm going to ask you for $100,000 for this cure. I think I said, what are you talking about? How could you take 100,000? That's all I own. He says, all he owns is $100,000. And if you're going to take my $100,000, I'm going to remain with nothing. And that's a good argument. I'm going to cure myself and walk out of the doctor's office with empty-handed? And the doctor looks at him and says, this is the charge for the cure. Maybe it's exaggerated example, but not necessarily. This is a complex, complicated situation. And the doctor says, if you want me to cure you, you have to pay this amount of money. And the person says, well, that's all I have. He says, it's your choice. What is a normal, healthy person going to do? Going to walk out with his money, and within a few months, he will be history, and his money won't be his, of course, at that time? Or going to say, look, this is what it is. If I have to walk out empty-handed, start anew, that's what I'll do, because that's what normal people do in order to live, in order to heal themselves, in order to cure themselves. So there's no end. Kol asher yitain, kol asher leishitim anafshi. For your own soul, for you to stay alive, you give everything. And Alter Rebbe has it famously in the context of tzedakah, that tzedakah has two dimensions. One, the pure mitzvah tzedakah, the other one, tzedakah being tikkun nefesh, the correction of the soul. Again, you got to see those chapters. Yud, and he gets a kodesh yud, and he gets a tshuva also. A click away, the third chapter, and he gets a tshuva. And here also, if it's refuas haguf, refuas nefesh, it's cure of the body, cure of the soul, and it atones. And the second thing, it shields from punishment. Am I going to stop giving tzedakah? Despite it's difficult, my situation is difficult? Of course not. I'm going to give and give and give and give because I need that kapara, number one. And I so appreciate that kapara to establish that perfect alignment with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which a normal person would stop and say, I can't give today. I need that kapara today. Not for any, it's just, we always need kapara of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the baginim on Puran is the shield from punishment. Of course I'm not going to stop giving. How much do I'll give everything away in order chas v'shalom not to suffer. So that's what he says. The skin for skin. I'm going to give my skin in order to save my skin. And how much? Kol hashitulin bad nafshe. Of course. So this is the fourth presentation of the Alter Rebbe. Again, it's based on what we learned of this, what we elaborated on in the last week's class, and this is the culmination. If you see last week, you'll see how perfectly this culminates. Again, even now, we try to close them both together, which you can understand. If it's refuas, I'll go for refuas nefesh. If it's cure to the body and the soul, I'll give everything away. And as such, despite the difficulty of the situation, I will not stop giving tzedakah. And here the Alter Rebbe continues with the fifth presentation. That even it's difficult, you still continue to give tzedakah. How difficult? The way the Alter Rebbe describes earlier. What is the fifth argument of the Alter Rebbe? We're believers, sons of believers, which is a term on the overall, generically said about the Yid, that this is who we are, not only believers, sons of believers. We are ma'aminim. The emunah of a Yid is always on fire, is always intact, and is always in full function. And therefore, in this context, of belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, regarding tzedakah, part of our belief is that tzedakah ein rak alva. In other words, we say believe in Hashem, but at the end of the day, it manifests in everything that Hashem it represents. That Hashem tells us to do. The Emunah captures the details, all the details and the subdivision details of everything that Hashem wants, because we believe in Hashem. We believe in everything Hashem wants, and Hashem established that tzedakah is just alone to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what we believe in as ma'aminim, b'nei ma'aminim, as believers, sons of believers in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what is this that we believe in the context of tzedakah? That tzedakah in Yirak halva HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedakah is only alone to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're lending HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yidiksiv mal v'Hashem chaynin dal. That Hashem, when you're chaynin dal, you demonstrate favor and grace to the poor. You're lending HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you're lending HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ugmula yishalem le'bikiflayim be'elam hazeh. Hashem's reward is not, okay, I gave $100 to the poor, and then one way or another, in a week or two, I'll find another $100 that I didn't expect, and I'll find it back, and Hashem will give it to me. No, Hashem says He's going to pay you much more than that. You're going to ask, what about the ribis? No, this is not a matter of ribis over here, because Hashem always wants to bless the Yid. He wants to give abundance to the Yid. He has so much to give us. And Hashem says, lend me this money, and I will continue giving what I have to give you, and therefore it's not going to be limited, it's not going to be commensurate to what you give. I'm going to give you kiflayim, doubly in this world. In what area? In every area. Health. Every bracha what a person needs. And there's many what a person needs as he navigates the odyssey of Elam Hazeh. But even in this area of Parnasa, we know that tzedakah is alone to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem pays us back so much more. And we mentioned also many times when the Torah says kiflayim, it doesn't only mean double. You have 100, you're going to get 200. No, much more. We spoke about this many times, even in Halacha and according to Torah. I think we even mentioned it in this very page, if I'm not mistaken. Torah says shaleach to shalach, send away the mother bird. How much you send away the mother bird? How many times? Not twice. Because you go back, shaleach to shalach, shalach to shaleach, and there's never an end. I always give the example. The original, I don't know what today is exact. The original barbers, you walked in I say Baruch, that's what it is. You have the two side mirrors. The only idea that you could say that is about infinity. In the end, it doesn't work out because it never works out because it always somewhat the way the mirror crosses the other. It's never perfectly straight. Let's not talk into the silly and irrelevant parts of this example, but you do find this idea that when you have two mirrors focusing on each other, that's true infinity. In other words, that's where it's not real, it's illusional, it's just two mirrors shining at each other, but the idea there is never a stop if you think about it. And I always give the example, when Teda puts two words adjacent to each other, there's never a stop because you could always go back and forth till when? It says if you may upon you want to send away the mother bird even 100 times. Doesn't mean 100 exactly, not 150. No, as long as the mother bird comes back again in the context of the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan, as we know it, be 115 and 120 and 130. As long as it comes back, you have to send it because Shalech to Shalach. Nosein Titein, for that matter, in the context of tzedakah, because they cross each other, so you're always going back and forth to no end. And quite a few times, Roteda says a double word, or for example, ma'od ma'od. We spoke about this many times. The Alter Rebbe writes ma'od ma'od, similar to when the commentaries tell us about Tora's description of a certain matter with these words of ma'od ma'od. It's not just like a double ma'od, very much, literally translated. It's a total different idea. And so two words, again, adjacent to each other, it's not two, and it's not 10. There's no end, because they always reflect back and forth. As long as the other party's in need, let's say nothing titin, you have to constantly give. In this case also, when the Alter Rebbe says Yishalom will be kiflayim be'elamazah in a doubly manner, it doesn't mean, you were tight and you squeezed $100 you gave to the poor, Hashem's going to give you 200. That's not bad actually. A loan to get double 100% on your investment. It's also great. But kiflayim, there's no end really. So just remember, giving tzedakah is a loan to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if you are going through a difficult time, and difficult time described out to them over here, loving va'eichlim, and someone says, take $100 right now, put it over here, and go to just swing around the shelf, you will see 200. And do it again, you'll see another 200. And do it again, you'll see maybe 300 or 400, which a normal person is going to say, no, I can't give this $100 because I'm in a very tight situation, particularly the situation described over here. No, every normal person will say, yes, I'm going to find that $100 to give because I'm going to just get the double back within moments. And if it's 3 minutes, and if it's 4 minutes, Hashem many times can do it within seconds, but if it takes a bit longer, in the end of the day, this is what it really is, and it's our perfect faith. Like we have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the extent that this is the DNA of a Yid. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, we have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu stands for, whatever Hashem told us clearly and explicitly, that tzedakah is a loan to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And how much is Hashem going to pay us back? B'kiflayim, many folds over, and not only in Olam Haba, the world to come, which sometimes Hashem reciprocates in the world to come, in the overall, as we say, not in this world, but after 120, in the world to come, or in the area of Chaim Nitzchim, but namely, or for that matter, we know Hashem's reward could be on a spiritual plane, to experience a great davening the following day. It's very rewarding. I mentioned once, I believe we mentioned over here, when Chassid said that if you ever experience a good davening, you'll realize that is the greatest delight and pleasure that a human being could ever experience more than any other pleasure, and you will not be any more interested in any other pleasure if you really, really had a healthy and meaningful and emotional, even the whole idea of davening is that emoting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you had a healthy, proper davening, you'll never seek any other pleasure in Elam Hazah. A famous expression of some famous chassid, which again, it's very telling what level a person could really be excited and have that inner deep pleasure and delight with the godly reality of Lakus, ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu, via davening. So that's very rewarding. Many times Hashem reciprocates reward on a spiritual plane. When it comes to tzedakah, it's known that Hashem rewards Ba'olam Hazeh in His very physical world with blessings expressed physically. If it's parnasa, in this case parnasa, the ability to have the expansion of funds of well-being as a result of tzedakah. And for that matter, it's famous, the schar kol hamitzvah leka b'olam hazeh alvad mitzedakah. Categorically, Hashem rewards in many different ways. But categorically, not necessarily all the rewards are manifest on a physical plane. I kept Shabbos, Hashem, where's the check? Hashem has the way He will reciprocate with Shabbos. It could be many times. It does come. Hashem rewards also physically as well. Rewards in a way that it manifests physically as well. But it's not locked in that way. Hashem has different ways to reward for every mitzvah, and again, it's case by case, time by time. He is the Dayan HaAmiti, the true judge, in the way He knows He is meant to be trusted, how He rewards every person based on the effort and the mitzvah that the person completes. If it's learning Torah, doing mitzvahs and so on, but you cannot say, oh, I need the reward on a physical plane, and therefore Hashem, I put on tefillin. Where's the bank draft? Where's the cash? As an example, you can't do that. But it comes to tzedakah, you can. The Gemara says, Hashem says, with tzedakah, you can say, Hashem, I gave tzedakah, where's the check? You can do that. It's interesting, right? But it's a Gemara. Gemara says, Hashem says, not only, like the expression, take me by the horns. I beg you, try it. Wow, that's very telling. As he says, there's no other mitzvah which is established on high to be rewarded in this physical world other than tzedakah. And the simple reason, he says, because tek labrius. It's not a mysterious idea why tzedakah Hashem guarantees the reward in this physical world. In other words, be manifest physically. There's a simple reason, is because giving tzedakah, you're bringing good, literally translated, to Hashem's created beings. Meaning, you're making them feel good physically. Someone is hungry and you come in and says, great, I'm so happy to see you and I'm so hurt for you. And let's learn a Blat Gemara together. I can make you a team maybe, but let's just learn Gemara. And no, that's not the way you give tzedakah. You give tzedakah also unconditionally. He's hungry. See somebody unclothed, clothe him, period. Not even for any good or any spiritual good. That's the mitzvah of tzedakah. To make him feel good, make them feel her warm with that clothing, that set of clothing. If they're hungry, give them to eat, period. That's the mitzvah of tzedakah. And because that's the mitzvah of tzedakah, that it makes people feel good physically, that's the reason why Hashem guarantees the reward for tzedakah to be manifest on a physical plane. Like it says in Kiddushin, in the tractate Kiddushin, say Perek Hama, in the end of the first chapter. In the end of the first Perek, in the end of the first segment of the tractate of Kiddushin. And here the Alter Rebbe goes to the sixth and the final presentation and argument. One should be cautious about a reprimand, a punishment, that your friends have assembled to a dvar mitzvah, got together and accounted. Nimni means they counted themselves in to do the mitzvah tzedakah. There was a campaign. Everybody's name was there. Everybody understood and appreciated the seriousness of it. Even they were also going through a difficult time, and your name was missing. That is very grave. According to Torah, it's grave. Your name is not counted together with them. It's known. The Chazal tell us how one would separate himself from a certain campaign. Namely, in the context of tzedakah, it is just simply no good. And therefore, to what degree, chas v'shalom, according to Torah, there could be a true reprimand, there could be a true punishment as such. That there was a list of a group which identified with this campaign for tzedakah, and your name wasn't, of course, technically, your name wasn't on it, you're not part of it. So you removed yourself from from this campaign, if you will. You removed yourself from donating to this cause. In this case, the cause which the Alter Rebbe speaks about, particularly the cause Al Rebbe speaks about, that not only on the overall assisting an organization or poor, but Evyenim, which is very, of course, the difference of Anim and Evyenim is very stark. Not only people are poor going through a difficult time, but people are destitute. And because of their destitution, people come together and identify with their state of destitution and put together a certain amount of money and make an effort because they're going through they also are going through a difficult time. And nonetheless, they push themselves in order to put together a certain amount of money to help their Avyenim Nikim, their brothers, and you're not part of that. You pulled yourself out. And for whatever reason you're going to give yourself, in the end of the day, you should be careful, additional to everything I told you over here, the other 5 presentations, you have to be careful and cautious of this, that your friends have counted themselves in for this mitzvah, and you're not there. And Alter Rebbe concludes, so this is the final presentation. Alter Rebbe concludes so beautiful this chapter, this epistle. U'l'shemim yeinam, and to those who are listening to this, shall it be sweet to them. The Alter Rebbe concludes with a big bracha, that it should fall upon them the blessing of good b'chol milid meitav, in all areas of good that the human being needs as a human being walking the face of the earth. In other words, meaning to say, Elam Haza, as an neshama b'guf, and a soul invested in a body by nature and innately and inherently, if you will, has all these different needs, parnasa, health, and all the brachas which we need as human beings. That's the way. That is the human condition, created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Alter Rebbe concludes this chapter, this epistle, saying that the ones who listen, and not only listen, but adhere to the call, not only hear, but adhere to the call, they should be sweet on them, and I bless you, and it should be the blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The birchas tov, the blessing of good, should fall upon you in all areas of meitav, all this good which a human being needs. That Hashem should give good to the good and to the straight, like your soul. In other words, he says that, of course, you're going to hop right on to become part of the good, and part of the Yesharim, the Tevim, and part of the Yesharim, the straightforward. And therefore, Hashem should give to those who are good, which is yourself, and those who are straightforward, kinafsham, like your soul, and he's referring to himself, the Alter Rebbe, the soul, which seeks your peace. And how much do I seek your peace? Mikol lev nefesh, with all heart and with all soul. And we know the Alter Rebbe's heart was very grand. Alter Rebbe's soul was very grand. And Alter Rebbe writes, I seek your peace, I seek your well-being, mikol lev, from all my heart and from all my soul, which is very telling. And ultimately, in this context, Alter Rebbe including himself, that Hashem should give the good to the overall, the good and the straightforward, like you, and includes himself humbly as well. V'nefesh, which is the soul, referring to the Alter Rebbe, and he adds, when he speaks about his soul, that seeks your peace and your well-being from all heart and all soul. And this is the final words of this beautiful Igeres HaKodesh. But I just want to make the connection. You see how the Alter Rebbe concludes that Igeres HaKodesh in this spirit, with such positivism and such love and such care. But that's the way he begins in the same spirit, in the same manner. Look how he begins the words. You can see it in the inside, in the beginning of the chapter. We spoke about it again when we began the first class. Ahuvai achaverei, my beloved, my friends, my brothers rather, and my friends. How much are you, my beloved, my brothers and my friends? Asher kinafshei. As much as the person loves himself and feels so close to himself, that's how I feel close to you. And Alter Rebbe again concludes very similar. When he speaks about himself, he humbly puts in these words, the soul which seeks your peace, your well-being. How much? With all my heart. All the heart of the Alter Rebbe seeks the well-being of every chassid, every yid, every single yid, and not only in his times, but throughout all times, for eternity. You have the heart of the Alter Rebbe, the full heart of the Alter Rebbe, the full heart, the full soul of the Alter Rebbe is Deire Shleimcha, seeks your peace. And again, in context with this bracha, Alter Rebbe, Zaytiv Hashem, Latevim Yisharim. And I would just add that Alter Rebbe comes through so amicably and so lovingly, and because he has a great demand over here. He's very much aware of their situation, but he comes very, very, I don't want to say strong, but very poignant. And he presents 6 reasons why we should never stop giving tzedakah despite the situation. But because if you could even add, I mean, Alter Rebbe always loves his people. He always identifies them as his beloved brothers and friends, and concludes in other times also how much he identifies with them with all heart and soul. But in this case, you can say the Alter Rebbe, in one hand, demands so much that we should never cease to give tzedakah, never compromise despite things are tough. Together with that, he so deeply identifies with our situation, so he begins and ends with such a sense of care and concern and love, and as he says, not stam, and seek for their well-being, mikol lev nefesh, from all his heart and all his soul. You can say that perhaps that's the reason why it begins this epistle and concludes this epistle in this very manner.